My name is Yingling. I'm a lecturer at EALC, and also I'm taking PhD courses. So I have my professor here, and I have my boss here, director. So this is just part of a coursework I did. It is very preliminary. I just want to share some data with you and get some feedback. So first, the motivation of the study. For Chinese, writing is a very important component, and especially for advanced learners, writing skills is a kind of important indicator of their overall language proficiency. So I want to look at this writing. It is hard for students because firstly, there's a huge distinction between the colloquial Chinese and written Chinese. So there are more like two systems. Even for native speakers, we have to learn how to speak properly and formally. This is the first challenge. And also for students at advanced level, they need not only to know how to use the language to master the forms, but also to convey their opinions, to talk about a lot of abstract social issues. So they have to apply the language and to give their own voice. And the third one is here at IU, we have Chinese flagship program, and the flagship students and non-flagship students are actually in one classroom, at least from first to fourth year. They have different learning goals, and they have different trajectories. For flagship students, their goal is to become language professionals, and they will spend 1 year in China doing capstone. And for non-flagship students, their motivation might be just, heritage, say, I want to talk more with my family, or for some, like, I want to relate to more native speakers. So their focus is not necessarily on writing. So I want to see how the classroom was actually like. What are the kind of socialization practice in the local community? And are they successful? Are they effective? If not, what are the problems? Like how are students' attitudes toward these practices, and how can we improve them? So my research design, this is a kind of micro classroom ethnography. The classroom practice I'm focusing on is open-ended discussion on writing. So I focus on this because this teacher had a component focus somehow on writing in her class. And after completing every chapter, she will have a kind of a discussion on students' writing. So they come to class, share what they've written, and teachers will also talk about some writing skills they can use and see if they've used those skills. So teacher have not read their papers yet, and in the class, the whole, they will share with classmates. And this community is a fourth year class, a second semester, so last fall. And what I'm investigating is the written academic discourse socialization. I focus mainly on two students, so it's more like a case study. And these two students are both male students. One is Neil, the other is Joseph, and they're both flagship students. They are both highly motivated, and they both studied Chinese here at IU from beginning level. So basically, their language learning background were different. However, they're comparable. However, they're also different in terms of previous background. One goes to private high school, and more kind of critical thinking guy, and the other has homeschooling, so he didn't receive formal education in the educational system. So I would like to see how they're different from each other as well. The research questions. First one is, how do students negotiate competence in the community as they participate in the open-ended discussions? And second one, so here, mainly I will explain it later, it's about the community of practice and their participation. And the second one is their attitudes toward these writing practices. So in the class, they have discussion and they have different writing assignments. So basically, how do they think of them? And last one is what are the explanations for their conformity or resistance to the socialization process. So we will see their attitude will affect their investment in classroom practices, and like from their perspective, why they're participating or not participating. Theoretical frameworks, it's mainly from this language socialization, and language socialization is about originates about how children learn language from their parents, and also how they are socialized into the culture by the language. And now there are more studies on L2 language socialization. This is more interesting because L2 learners, different from L1 learners, especially adult learners, they bring with them their linguistic and cultural background. So the process, the socialization process will be hard to predict. It's not assumed that the community welcomes the newcomers and the newcomers is willing to participate in the practice. Not necessarily so. You will see a lot of agency and a lot of power relationships going on in the socialization process. Under this L2 language socialization, I think community of practice is a good tool or theory to follow. Basically, classroom can be seen as a community, and in this classroom there are different practices. So in this study, I focus on open-ended discussion, and teachers do this to achieve certain goals. So they have their purpose, and students are like newcomers. So they are kind of engaged in the practice and move from peripheral participants to full participants. So there is a process become from a novice to more expert-like. For the methodology, it's mainly discourse analysis. As it is classroom is featured by its IRE, IRF kind of pattern. So that means I is initiation. The teacher usually starts with a question, and then students gives a response, and teacher gives an evaluation or follow-up. For example, even if the teacher knows the time, she will ask, right, what is time now? And students answer, oh, it's 4:30, very good. So this kind of conversation. It is unlike natural conversation because you know the answer, but you still ask it. So you're focusing more on the form. But a follow-up will be a little different. Follow-up sometimes more on elaboration. So what do you mean? Could you give more answers, or like a reformulation? Teachers tries to summarize things like that. So this will be interesting. It will be interesting to look at teachers' evaluation and follow-up, because that's their expectation, what they wanted the students to achieve. And also production format, this is by Goldman. 3 formats. One is animator, is like the one who speaks, like the speaker, just to convey the message. And second one, the author. Author is like who wrote this. And the second one, principle, if this message conveys what you mean. Take, for example, Obama's speech. So he is definitely the animator. He is speaking. And then author, we don't know. Maybe it's written by him or by someone else or by the whole group of people who support him. And then principle, yes, maybe majority he says what he means, but also you can say sometimes it's not true because for some political purposes he might just convey certain messages. Okay. And the last one is indexes. So indexes, like for example using pronouns or using sentence and particles to index a stance, and also the stance shows your identity. So the context, the class I'm looking at is advanced class, and they meet 3 times a week. And there are non-heritage, fresh, non-fresh, and as you can see, diverse backgrounds. And the teacher is from Taiwan and a PhD student in pedagogy and education. Okay. Data collection, I wanted to see, because for socialization, it's not only what the teacher or student said, but also what they did. So I conducted classroom observations for 7 times, and voice recorded their classroom interactions and take field notes. And also I conducted interviews with some focal students and teachers, talk about their writings, talk about their attitudes toward practices. And I collected artifacts such as syllabus, assignments, and essays. Okay. So first I want to just briefly, sorry it's very long, but I just want to briefly show what I mean by this open-ended discussion on writing. So this one, they're talking about Americans' electoral system, whether it's good or not, what kind of benefits they have. And the teacher starts by saying, first talk about what advantage there are. And he tried to elicit some responses, but have to call on particular student. Okay, and then the students say, one advantage is that in America, many people have the right to vote. In other countries, there are no such rights. Okay, so have some standards, but do not have the right to vote. And here the teacher responded, right, good. So people enjoy the right to vote. Okay, this is one advantage, kind of sum up. And this is good. Anything else? As you see here, there's a pause, so no one actually follows up. No students follows. And then here the teachers kind of change it, say, then because everyone can vote, so represent what? The electoral system can reflect what? Can reflect people's opinions, which is called public will, right? Let's say reflect public will. So here it's interesting because first they were talking about the content. Teachers want to know, share opinions about this issue. But then move on, as you can see, this part, she is trying to elicit a vocabulary. And this vocabulary was newly learned, so she wants to check if students can use this vocabulary. So the focus is on language form rather than content. And she even caused the whole class to repeat after her. And then students say it, republic. Okay, and then she moves on. Anything else? Is there anything else? Going back to content. But as you see, she didn't really kind of comment on the content itself. Didn't say whether the opinion is good or do you need to show more evidence to support your opinion. Okay, and then here another student say, okay, so for me, the advantage is encourages young people to participate in the election event. And teacher, good, very good evaluation. To encourage young people to care more about the issues of the country. Very good. And then she did this. Can also say one of the advantages. Sorry, there should be yes. And then student repeat one of the advantages. And then one of the advantages. So again, that's more like a drill practice, right? On the form, one off. So this is like. I didn't mean to say that all the discussions are like that, but as you see, when there's some silence, a lot of times teachers will change the focus, switch to forms. Okay. And now let's see how students participate, our two case studies. First one, this is the Neil, the one who's graduated from a private high school. So, okay, again, the teacher said, let's talk about this one country, two system. So they're talking about the mainland Taiwan and mainland China and Taiwan relationship. And in China, there is a policy called one country, two systems. And they want to see, it is carried out in Hong Kong. They want to see if it's possible to copy this policy in Taiwan. Is it feasible? And so the teacher asked, and Neil said, I analyzed from two perspectives. The first was when China two-system policy was not adopted well in Hong Kong. Okay. And because there's a big protest, and Hong Kong does not like it. And Taiwan, in these 50 years, always think it is another country. So here, the first reason is Hong Kong. It doesn't work well in Hong Kong. And second reason, Taiwan thinks it's another country. And if you tell Taiwan that you're one part of China, they will be unhappy. So thinking about Taiwan and China can be put together, I think it's impossible for 2 reasons. And the teacher reformulated it this way. So you think you first, from the perspective of Hong Kong's protest incident, so you think Taiwan is not possible to adopt. So it's simplify it, just, simplify the logic to, because in Hong Kong it's not working, so in Taiwan it's not working. Actually abandon the second reason he is talking about. He also mentioned about Taiwan's people's kind of views. So instead of just agreeing with the teacher, Neil was very brave. He kind of said, immediately after the teacher, he said, first, one country, two system, not a good policy. Second, Taiwan people would definitely not accept the policy. So very clear, first and second, like that's my logic. I'm saying this, I'm the principal of this utterance. So teacher, you couldn't change my view. That's what I mean, right? Your logic is not right. And teacher is like, oh, okay, anything else? Didn't follow up with more things. And then what about you? Move to another student. So as you can see, this Neil is very competent. He is able to first express his opinions, second use proper language, and he defends his opinions. Okay. And the second one is Joseph. So this time, again, it's about the electoral system in the US. And Joseph, what did you write? Advantage? And he said, what I wrote was even minority could have chances to succeed. So for example, small relative few such people can also succeed. So here relative, I think he is talking about like female or ethnic minorities or those from minority groups. And the teacher said, if the vote is few, he can still succeed. So this can be one of the advantages. And here, this is not accurate summary of his points again, because he is not talking about the vote numbers, like the actual, like how many counts of votes you got. It's about whether you're from a majority or from a minority group, right? But see, Joseph said, right, he didn't have any objections. He just follows the teachers. And okay, so the teacher said, oh, thinking from an opposite way might be good for candidates. Okay, right. So here, this is more about writing skills. When you write, you can think about from opposing perspective. But the way teacher explained was not accurate. Okay. But from this episode, you can also see Joseph was linguistically competent, and he's willing to participate and also kind of follow what teacher said. So, and the second I want to show, to answer the second question, their attitudes, it's very interesting. Neil here, actually it is him brought up, like at first I was not looking at like attitude things, but he has strong opinions of the class and of writing exercises. That's why I kind of find it very interesting. So here Neil said, I'm conducting some quiet protest against Chinese class. And laugh. So this laugh may be just kind of awkward, but I try to mitigate the embarrassment. And I said, okay, silent protest. Why? Can't tell me. And it's like, okay, because when we had Chinese class, so I found when I was in second year level, when we discussed the topic, didn't discuss the topic, just practice using vocabulary. So when I talk my opinions, teacher and students didn't care what my opinion was. They just listened to how my Chinese was, what vocabulary, what sentence patterns I used. So when I write essays or talk during class, when I talk about my opinions, I'm not willing to talk about my real thoughts are. Okay? Because I know nobody will care what I'm thinking. Right? So here I put some, I color-coded some things. So here this is, the red one represents I, as opposed to teachers and the classmates. So they don't care about opinions. I care. This is the first thing, the contrast. Okay, and the second contrast, like again, in other several classes, when we had discussions, it was really a debate. Like who did research, who had real facts. can back up their arguments. Because Chinese class was not like that. So the second contrast, right? Chinese classes versus other classes. So it's clear now he is positioning himself as someone belonging to the American academic discourse, who values critical thinking, who values, really defending your opinions, versus someone in a language class who just needs to learn the language forms. Okay. That's nil. And, it's Joseph. Because you look at what you have to use, so the other student. The goal of it is to express your opinion, but the main goal is to learn the grammar patterns and words, and to know how to use them in a correct context. So I feel as long as I'm learning that, it's what's important. And I don't have a major opinions on anything really. I'm very relaxed opinions on almost everything. So it's easy for me to go toward one side or another, to argue for any direction. So I end up looking at words and grammar patterns and I say, all right, here's what I can say. Right? So this kind of students, we will say, okay, very good students, because they're really motivated to use the language, and opinions is not so important for them. And that's why you can see in the class, he didn't mind the teacher changed his opinions, as long as he is using the form. So yeah, here just some explanations. I think Neil, he understood the expectation, because in the writing, in the actual essays, he still used those patterns and follow all the writing instructions. It's just in class, he wasn't willing to participate that much. And he see it not just as that particular class, it was more like Chinese classes, because from second year to third year to fourth year, it's the practice of this community. Also, in class, he didn't volunteer. It's always when teacher called upon him, he would give a response. Otherwise, he kept silent most of the time. Okay, he see this practice as, to some extent, deprive him of his own voice. Okay, so he positioned himself against this socialization process. In contrast with Joseph, he gained this competence by participating in the practice. So in class, he volunteered and he's willing to share. He consciously used these certain forms to explain his ideas. And he said, although sometimes I felt like I have to force the grammar patterns in my essays and makes the essay very choppy and a little hard to read, but I still think it's important because there will be words and grammar patterns that are useful in any situations. So not necessarily in this situation, I can still use them in future situations. Okay. And he valued the teacher's feedback. And what's even more interesting, as we can see here, is in class, when they have another discussion, not about an essay, but just talk about the topic, about the westernization in China. So the other student first to say this, I don't know how to say it in Chinese. I think China used westernization as an scapegoat. Okay, so he used the English here. Teacher here, teacher say, okay, you just mentioned, a little extreme, or you mentioned scapegoat. You can say, you can use something, you can say the pattern, use something as shield. We have learned this before. So the teacher was trying to provide another sentence pattern, another form he can use to formulate his opinions. Joseph just, followed up. I agree with his opinion, because opinion was not that necessarily important, right? China will, in the name of maintaining the traditional culture, to control people. So in the name of, that's another important grammar pattern in that chapter. So he wants to show, I know how to use patterns. I can, paraphrase it in another way, even if I don't know the actual word. And the teacher's response was, oh, he also used a very, very good one. We have learned it in the name of something, to do something. Good, very good. Actually, I'm going to say about that. Right? It's okay, we're thinking the same way. You're following my path. Okay, so yeah, basically that's what some findings, implications. That's, I don't know if it's accurate, but I just want to say what teacher hoped to do and what they actually achieved might not necessarily be consistent. The purpose actually for this open-ended discussion is to have students share opinions, but it ended up only, sharing opinions with teachers, and this is just one direction interaction, and the students don't care about what others' opinions are, and they don't kind of question about them. So in this sense, they learn the patterns, but not sharing opinions. And the teacher's feedback, at first it's on content, however, a lot of time they switch to language. And I have to admit, I do that too, because it's a language class. That's what I focus on, right? If you can use the pattern. I know you can express your opinions by using other words, but that's learned earlier. Now we need to use new words, new vocabulary, new patterns, so try to use them to prove you learned something from the class. But as we can see, that's discouraged some students, even very motivated and proficient students. So these reasons for not participating here is not necessarily low language proficiency, but rather their attitudes, their learning style, especially in this case, is their L1 academic background, what they have before. Yes. Okay, so that's all. Thank you. Any questions?
How much they learn?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Cause for Neil, he commented like, I can learn these grammars on my own. It's like I don't need to do it in class. Like I want to share opinions. And for the Joseph, he said like, cause he was a little kind of he was very concerned about his grades, and he always think like, I need to follow teachers, otherwise I couldn't get a grade, I couldn't go out study abroad. So he's just very obedient, and so he thinks he attributes all his improvement to teachers' practices rather than Neil. He attributes all the kind of successful learning more to himself. So I think that affected the socialization there. Yeah, as well.
When you say two writing systems, we're talking pinyin, right?
Oh no, here I'm talking about pinyin is sound for characters, but here I'm talking about colloquial or you can say informal Chinese versus formal Chinese. It's more like a register difference. Like when you talk with, like in English, when one is more like a kitchen talk, you talk with your friends, family members, chit chat. And the other is like when someone gives a speech or a job interview, you have to use formal, professional words. Yeah.
And are these, speaking cultural habits, are they the same in PRC as they are in Taiwan? Or is there a big difference between the way it's done in Taiwan and PRC?
I think it's mostly similar. It's mostly similar, yeah. Yeah. And the textbook they use to choose mainly articles from mainland newspapers. Mm-hmm. But I would say the more formal it is, the closer to varieties are.
And is it also different or the same in Hong Kong?
Hong Kong, that's an interesting question. I think there's a
my question is, if they had a teacher from Hong Kong, or from one culture, from culture A, as opposed to a teacher from culture B, would that influence their opinions, Or if they have friends or family that are from culture A or from culture B, would that influence their opinions? And maybe Neil has friends or family from one culture, and Joseph or Joshua has a teacher from another culture, and he's going, just shut up, this is just fine, I don't know if that's an influence, but it seems like it would be.
But that's an interesting question. I think it has a lot to do with the teacher's educational background.
Yes.
And in Taiwan and in mainland, I would say it will be more similar. Still, it's more like a respect for authority, and you cite authorities as proof, as evidence. But in Hong Kong, I assume there will be some difference, as the educational system is affected by British kind of, way. So
I disagree with you. The people from Taiwan are actually very open-minded. Yeah, most of them are educated in this country.
Yes.
Yeah, and also, but I think it's dangerous to say the person from a cultural area, they will think alike. Because
Oh, that's
the
good.
political stance in Taiwan actually are very divided. So depending on what kind of family background you're from. So, but I think definitely students will be affected by their teachers.
Culture. Maybe culture is better than country.
Or political stance or their upbringing.
yeah. I think here it's not more about political stance. It's still more about like what kind of education they receive in their home
Yes.
countries. Like in class, this is more like discussion type, or is it more like lecture type?
I know one time when I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we had 4 different church groups bringing people from Russia and sponsoring families from Russia. And they are all learning Russian from English from the people who sponsored them. But because the congregations couldn't talk to each other, the Russian people came over and would not talk to each other. And we had an apartment fire where there was like 20 apartments affected, and most of them were Russian speakers. And this was the first time the 4 different groups had gotten together and talked to each other in 3 years, And I just know that those cultural influences can be very strong from teachers.
Can I ask a quick question? If so, in the I think he kept saying Joseph, but I kept seeing Joshua.
Sorry,
So-
that's my.
Oh, okay, so actually
Yeah.
Joshua is...
Same person.
I need to coach that. Yeah.
I have a question on the, you showed a little how the teacher reacted to various things that the students did, and I was just wondering, in the examples you gave, the teacher valued mostly the correct language use of formal language, and I was wondering if that's something you saw throughout the data, or if you also saw the teacher valuing opinions, because I was wondering how much the evaluation of the teacher actually affects what the students then do in class, and if some of Neil's frustration might have been also due to the fact that teacher didn't value that. I don't know what you saw in the data.
Yeah. The teachers also commented on content, but it's more like a summary of what the student said. For example, the student said, okay, I think this one China 2 system is not working because of blah, blah, blah. And the teachers would say, okay, so you're talking from a political perspective. And anyone from economic perspective, and then move on. So it's not challenging students' opinions. It's more like any opinion will be fine as long as you back up with evidence, but not necessarily forming a dialogue among them. So that's what I think Neil is having trouble with. Thank you so much.
That was great.